England versus the world. Emma Fox W4. England started out as a quiet, peaceful, isolated country in northwest Europe. They were separated from other European countries by sea, as they were an island. Europe, especially England, was late to settle as it took longer during migration to reach Europe. This late migration was due to the Ice Age that started about 2 million years BCE, while it ended in 10,000 BCE. Due to their late start, England is completely isolated, as no one wants to spend their time and resources to travel across the sea to trade or fight. It simply just wasn't worth it to other countries to travel overseas to England, as they had closer nearby countries to trade with. So, while other European countries fought and traded and grew, England stood by peacefully. However, they would not have survived this long being isolated, if it weren't for their geographic luck. As Jared Diamond explained, they had plenty of land and no one to protect it from. They had surplus of wood from trees as well as land for farming. They used the wood to build houses, boats, fences, and anything else they desired, as they had plenty to use. They then used the logged land as farming, to grow all of their crops. Due to this, they surely had food surplus. However, if England were located in another part of the world where there wasn't good farming or bountiful amount of trees, England would have a completely different history. In the 1470s, England was happily living on their own. There are no wolves, bears nor lions in England. The sheep lie out at nights without their shepherds, penned up in folds, and the lands are improving at the same time. Whence it comes to pass that the inhabitants are seldom fatigued with hard labour. This quote relates to the people of England, as they sleep unguarded night by night. They know that nobody's there to hurt them, and that they won't be invaded during the night. So, they let their guard down, shepherds, and sleep unprotected. They also work tirelessly to achieve the land and homes they want. While England sat to the side, the rest of Europe was entering the global awakening, starting in 1096. The Islamic Caliphate grew and expanded. People in and around the Elephant Sea of Africa started small trading, and the Silk Road was already in effect. Although England was never part of the loop, they picked up tips and tricks here and there. They slowly started to become more involved with the world growing around them. Also starting in 1096, was the First Crusade. Between then and 1281, there were 5 major crusades, including the final, which would obliterate the fight. Europe, due to the 8 wars, had lost the majority of their armies, and were defenseless. In contrary to the devastation, they all picked up new knowledge from the opposite side. Fortunately for England, they didn't get the first blow of the Black Death, but it eventually caught up to them as they had nowhere to flee. In 1347, the Black Death started. It was carried by fleas that rode on gerbils across the Silk Road. It quickly made its way to Europe, killing up to 60% of Europe's population. Victims would show weakness, fever, and in severe cases tissue bleeding that caused black bumps covering the entire body. There was a small chance in surviving, especially after what doctors recommended. They recommended not washing clothes or bathing to create a smell that would draw away the fleas. In contrary, what they actually needed in order to survive was to wash themselves and stay clean. Everything changed in 1453. The Turks took over Constantinople, due to the lack of people from the Black Death to protect their city. This eventually led to the Ottoman Empire. All trade routes across Europe closed, and sea became the new form of transportation. England ruled, as they had plenty of sea to travel and trade. Both the Spanish and Portuguese spice trade led to the finding of the New World. Christopher Columbus, who started by training with the Portuguese, and switched to work for the Spanish. He later went on to travel the globe in order to find peppercorn in the Holy Lands. Instead, he found America. Up until 1660, wool was the common fabric used for clothing in England, as they had plenty of sheep. Cotton was being made in India, and soon became very popular. When England at last awakened from its monochromatic slumber, they jumped out of bed, pulled up the shades and proclaimed, "Let there be light." Chintz and calico fabric flooded into dressing rooms, bedrooms and closets. English ladies ripped apart draperies, rugs and bed linens made of chintz and transformed them into dresses, robes and gown. England started by buying cotton from India, but decided it would be easier to slave the Indians into making it for them. So, in 1757 England fought and won against India. They burned their mills and forced them to grow cotton. That cotton would then be shipped to England, where they would sell it and make profit. England also realized that they were settled on top of one of the world's largest coal mines, and they became richer than ever before. In 1784, cotton was 6% of England's exports. By 1826, cotton exports accounted for 48.5% of exports, and houses, whose sturdily built roofs reared menacingly skyward. Over this 42-year span, the amount of cotton grew to 8 times the original amount. It was crazy how much it grew after England took over India's exports. British import of cotton 1860–1865, millions of bales. We seem, as it were, to have conquered and peopled half the world in a fit of absence of mind. England turned from a small country off to the sides, to dominating both Europe and the world. All by waiting their turn and letting other countries fight their battles. They just picked up bonus points along the way. Bibliography.